Jimmy Gallant has been a pastor, a city councilman, and a police chaplain, and he's always been there for the people of Charleston. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I speak exclusively with him one-on-one. Reverend Gallant.
Hey man, how are you?
I'm doing just great.
Good.
It's been 2 years since I've seen you.
2 years, wow. Time went by really fast.
Catch me up about what's going on with you right now.
Well, I'm over at St. Andrew's Episcopal Mission Church here now, and I've been here since 2013. Prior to that, the last time I spoke to you, I believe I was going back and forth to Orangeburg,
right, to
St. Paul's Church at the entrance of South Carolina State University.
Right.
And the bishop saw an opportunity for me to come back in and to be here because the prior priest here is up at Bohees now.
Wow.
So it's been interesting being back home. I've enjoyed being back home because, again, I'm not having to drive and do that stuff on the road anymore.
Right.
So that's been very interesting for me. Very, very good for me.
Oh, absolutely. You talk about home. Let me take you to West Ashley. Obviously, a couple of miles down the road here is a debate about the future of Maryville, Ashleyville.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, development will be coming in with Crescent Homes, and a lot of people are uneasy about that. When you think of really the history of Maryville, Ashleyville, what sticks out to you?
Well, there are a lot of the mothers that actually raised me in the ministry. I remember my spiritual mother, in fact, her picture's up on my wall. Miss Ann Demeron, she lived on Main Street there.
Right.
And I frequented her house, back in the 80s, before she died in the 90s, to have prayer, for her to counsel me on a lot of things. She introduced me to a lot of the other mothers in Maryville. So that was a very family-oriented neighborhood.
Right.
A lot of people grew up out of that neighborhood, just good people.
Right.
I guess right now everybody wants to be on the water, and there's some water there, marshland, and it's a beautiful area.
Right.
That I hope that they can come to some kind of agreement where they don't build houses there and take away from that neighborhood.
Mm. Obviously, that issue has been brought up to City Council many times. As you know, with City Council right now, there's a rift with some of the members with the Charleston Area Justice Ministry. Obviously, Charleston Mayor John Tecklenburg told the Justice Ministry, hey, we're going to keep Novak Consulting Firm to do a police audit on the Charleston Police Department. I know the ministry wanted to have an outside audit, and Councilman James Lewis wanted to have an outside audit that modeled the one in Madison, Wisconsin. When you think of really the Charleston Police Department, because obviously you used to be a police chaplain, what plays in your mind?
There was a tremendous amount of change in the Charleston Police Department in the last 7 years. I hear people say to me, simply because again, Reuben Greenberg had chosen me to be the chaplain for CPD, and he was very, very supportive of all that I did. And I hear community people come to me and they say, well, we miss some of the amenities that Chief Greenberg had. Particularly, I live up in Wagon Terrace. The horses are gone, and a new chief had a different idea, a different flair about that. I remember Chief Greenberg had these buses that he bought with drug money. It wasn't taxpayers' money. Money that he had confiscated and bought these buses. And they used to take the senior citizens anywhere they wanted to go, and they used to take trips to Myrtle Beach, to Columbia. He allowed us to use them to take inner city kids to the Capitol up there. Right. So they were actually used for a lot of good community things. When the new chief came along, there came something about liability. Well, they did it for 10 years, and liability wasn't an issue then, but it was just something that was given back to the community. So the police department is changed drastically. After the new chief came, there were a lot of changes were done. And I think there are some council members that are looking to see, how those changes were done, the benefit of those changes. I can understand them kind of wanting an audit to see what was going on. I've been away from council now since 2011, so I don't have all the agenda items and reasons why they're asking for that. But I guess personally, I don't see where it would hurt. I don't want to get in the middle like I'm taking sides. Right. But I certainly can understand when you have council members that have to answer to their constituents about spending, and Charleston is growing tremendously. Look at all the growth. Right. Downtown is changing, the heights of these hotels and things. So I think that they really are trying to have a good handle on our police department. So I hope that they can come to some kind of agreement with that.
You talk about Charleston changing. As we were driving up here, you talked to me about obviously the new condos and the hotels are coming up, and you basically said, hey, Charleston's losing itself to developers. When you look at Charleston when you were city council back then to right now, what is the biggest difference in your mind?
Well, you ride around now and you see all of these massive buildings going up. You look on the west side on the corner of Spring and Lockwood Boulevard, there's going to be a 9-story condo development. You go directly behind the police department, and that condo concept that they're building there absolutely swallowed. It has swallowed up the police department in the courtroom. I mean, it's just overshadowing. You go on the corner of Hughie and Meeting Street. And you watch this massive construction, and there's a church right down the street, Greater Refuge.
Right.
And there's a building right across from Greater Refuge. It looks like it's about 7 or 8 stories. It's actually overshadowing the church. I grew up here, so you walk around now and you look up in the air and you see all of these buildings going up. I guess my eyes were just trained to look at the little cottages, the neat little shops, the corner stores, the shops that were just, you don't have to look up in the air to see them. You just walk up in and they're there. But now we've got these, again, these incredible buildings that are going up, and it has actually changed the landscape of downtown, particularly from King and Spring all the way down to King and Calhoun. And then as you come into some of the inner parts of it now with the condos, I named some streets, Hughie, the police station, Spring Street.
Right, oh yeah.
If you weren't here and grew up and knew what it was before, then fine. But those of us that have been here for a long time, that's an incredible change. An incredible change, and not sure how that's going to affect those that live in Gatson Green Project, those that live in the housing authorities over on East Bay Street and America Street. How are these new buildings and these new complexes going to affect the people that are the citizens that, like they said, the beignets, all right? And they've been here all their lives. And how's that going to affect them financially? How's that going to affect them emotionally? Because again, this is a drastic landscape change for these people that live here.
You talk about change, and obviously you touched on this just a tad bit earlier, but obviously the new police chief now is Greg Mellon. He's actually on his way out after retiring for 35 years with the law enforcement and obviously 10 years with the Charleston Police Department. He'll be leaving August 1st. And I think I heard this morning on the news that State Representative Wendell Gillard wants to recommend James Taylor to be the next police chief for Charleston Police. You've known James Taylor for a long time. Jerome Taylor, I'm sorry. Jerome Taylor for a long time. For those who don't know him, describe Jerome Taylor.
Gosh, he's been with the department for years. Trained under Chief Greenberg. I think he ended up being, before Chief Greenberg died, he was Major Taylor. He became deputy chief under Chief Mullen. Guy has incredible knowledge about the police department. I did some training with him as a major, even as a chaplain. I think he was over the SWAT team at one time years ago, and he was a go-to guy. That he taught me a lot about policing, being a chaplain and hostage negotiations and things like that with the SWAT team. I was allowed under his leadership to spend a lot of time with the SWAT officers to learn a lot. I believe that his leadership in the department is solid because he's been there, and he's been commander of several of the intricate parts of the police department. I think he's an incredible, knowledgeable guy. He could have been chief of police the last time, So I think that he would make an incredible police chief because of his understanding of the department and understanding of Charleston. He grew up here. He's a Charleston guy. He does things in the community even when he's not at the police department. I see Jerome out at a lot of just community events, and he's there. He's approachable too.
Oh yeah.
He's a very approachable guy, and I think that that's very important when you in a position like that. You see him in the intertwines in the community. I think it would, me personally, it would be an incredible appointment or assignment from him if that's what they chose, if he wants to accept it. You know, I think that, hey, sometimes we have a lot of good people within an organization, and sometimes we go out to look to bring somebody in, but once, if we look in our house sometimes, we've got some incredible in-house people that can do a great job. I think that he would be a great police chief if he chose to accept it.
Right. You talk about your time as a police chaplain. There's been a lot of unfortunate, murders and violent crimes in the area recently. What Bible scripture are you looking at right now when you look at the crimes that are going on here in this community?
Matthew says the harvest is ready, but the laborers are few. Pray ye the Lord of the harvest that he sends those out into the harvest to actually, and I'm paraphrasing, to recoup those that are out there. All that's saying is people out there are ready for a change inwardly and spiritually. And the assignment that the Lord has given us through the scriptures is that we have to go out into that harvest. And an old pastor taught me something that says, when the harvest is right, if you've got a field and your harvest is right, and particularly he said you've got fruit, the fruit is ready. If you don't go out and glean the harvest, guess what happened to it? It rots. And so spiritually, the human fiber that's seeking the harvest and the love of God, if we don't go out to gather them, paraphrase, they rot. That means they're spiritual inside. They lose the motivation of living.
Sure.
But all the murders that I went to over the years as a chaplain, I buried, I guess, pretty close to 80 to 100 kids from all over this county that got killed in murders.
Oh, yeah.
And I always said to the leaders when we did midnight basketball,
yes.
We really had an impact with that. And we told the kids the reason that they're dying because nobody has taught them how to live. So we have to teach these kids how to live. We took kids to California to play basketball. We took them on an educational tour to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, to the Statue of Liberty. Well, these kids have never been there. And these were little kids from all over Charleston that we've gleaned. All right, and again, I'm using that scripture because we went out to embrace them and to bring them and to show them. Well, I can't count all the kids that end up going to college and graduating as a result of that. From the Citadel. Melvin Watson from the University basketball player, Mel President, A.J. Harley, who graduated from the Citadel.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember some of these kids saying, I want to go to this school, I want to go to that school. And we had kids from Chucktown that did well in big colleges in the state.
That's true.
And so we have to get back to that. I think we've lost some of that. I know there are organizations out there doing things, but I believe that that they have the hands-on. That and we had great support from Chief Greenberg to do that. Mayor Riley gave us great support at that time from '99 to 2011. I was on council. I was serving as the police chaplain, and I did that for no pay because Chief said, "I need you out here. I really need you out here." It took a toll on me, In fact, when I had open heart surgery in 2004, my cardiologist said, "Man, you just got so much stress on you." He said, "You don't realize the stress that you carry upon you in your ministry." He said, "I'm not telling you to stop your ministry, but he says, as you move forward, he said, you have to pick your battles." He said, because there are a lot of things and people pulling at you because you're committed to doing what's good. And so I have pictures in a briefcase of all the obituaries that I kept over the years. In fact, just recently, I was speaking to one of my cousins who's a nurse in the VA in Baltimore, and she asked me a question. She said, "Has anybody ever debriefed you? Have you ever sat down and just got all that stuff out of you that's in you?" And I said, "No, Julie, I haven't." She said, "I think you need to do that." She said, "Because you took on a lot of stuff, and she said you gave a lot." And she says, "I think you got a lot in you." And I'm just sharing that because again, just the work to do in our community, no one man can do it. And I realized that I didn't do it all by myself, but I share that to somebody that wants to get out and make a difference in our community, that it takes a team effort to do it.
Obviously, you buried a lot of, youth really on the east side of Charleston beyond back in the day. Have you had that moment when you had to sit down with those, parents and say, hey, how do you keep going?
Yeah, at times I get calls. I run into a parent and they would say to me, you know what, I never thought I would make it this far. It's been 5 years or 10 years since I've lost my son, and you were there, and thank you for being there for me. And they never actually get over that. My wife and I had twin boys, and one of our little boys died when they were babies. And so when a parent loses a child, I know what that feels like. I know what that feels like to bury a child, and that's a hole in your heart that's always there. And I get a chance to get hugs and kisses and notes from families that saying thank you. We always remember you being there for in our hard times.
Right.
But it's very yes, I do get people that ask me. Thank me for being there and says, sometimes it's hard to go on, particularly on anniversaries of the death of these young kids, or the kids that they've lost. Right. And, just recently, think of the Emmanuel 9.
Right.
The 2 years that comes around, the pain that this community had to bear with that. Right. Just on the 10th anniversary of the firefighters who lost at the Superstore, the family asked the police, the fire chaplain, they wanted me to read the letters. Families wrote letters of what they felt after 10 years of not being with their loved ones or losing them. And I prayed that when I was reading those letters, Lord, let me get through these letters without getting so emotional, because I did the notification that night.
Right.
I gathered all those firefighters' families and did that. And I got through it okay. And I have little notes right now from some of the family members thanking me for that particular ministry that I gave back. And so those things again has I believe played a toll in our community. And our community is a strong community because it is going through a lot of healing.
Sure.
A lot of healing. Yeah. And it's going to take a while. It'll be a while for us to really heal and mend from the process of the bruises that this community has gone through. Back to back almost.
Right.
So I continue to pray again for our community, for our leaders. I admonish our council members. I know that is to have to work and discern the very best for our community. And so I always tell James and the guys, I'm always praying for them.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, you've been a pastor. You've been involved with Midnight Basketball. You have obviously been a police chaplain. You are a father and husband. Write the headline. What's next with Jimmy Gallant?
I just want to just maintain where I'm at and follow the Spirit of God as I'm getting older. I'm 68 years old.
Wow.
And as you get older, you have to find out what your limitations are, because your legs are not as strong as they used to be. You can't run that gamut like you used to do because you're getting older.
Yeah.
I think what's next for me is to be very vigilant where I'm at here now as the vicar of this church. There's a lot that can be done in this community. I want to share my services with the community. I was recently asked by the Highway Patrol to be a member of the Advisory Council for the South Carolina Highway Patrol. Good friend of mine who's now become the Colonel Chris Williamson. He said, I need your voice there to help us be good people in the community, for the state troopers to be good people on the roadway. Particularly with all the police shootings we've been having, to be able to talk about, how do you talk to African American men if you're a white police officer and you're approaching an African American man in any capacity in law enforcement? How should your approach be? Your body language, your tone of voice. All of those things play in, I believe, with some of the shootings that we've had across America. Just the having a good attitude and not judging an African American man or boy simply because of the way he dresses or the kind of car he's driving his body language, and I think that we need to glean that from one another. As an African American pastor, I want to share my experiences with white brothers in ministry. Here's how I think we can make this better. I had great relationships with the white officers when Chief Greenberg was there.
Right.
And a lot of them used to come to me and says, Brother Gallant, I've got a situation, and I'm working with an African American guy. What's a good thing for me to do? And these were officers that had relationships with African American men, playing basketball in a basketball league, or doing something that they have a friend or neighbor that's African American, and we would just share information. Many years when they had the police corps at the Citadel.
Right.
At the time, Major Glenn Youngblood created a position for me for that police corps. That before those guys graduated, I taught a class on peer leadership and community development. And my thing was to take the young officers and say, what would happen if you had to deal with this situation? So we had scenarios that I taught.
Mm.
And some of the scenarios really were black-white scenarios. What would happen if you got into a confrontation with a black guy? And we created these scenarios, and because of me being out there as a chaplain,
Right.
and that was part of their training before they graduated from the South, at the time we called the South Carolina Police Corps. It was at the Citadel.
Wow.
And so here we are now in 2017, and we have a lot of circumstances where I believe that type training or that type sharing of information could be good.
Right.
Because again, right now, if we look across the country, we've had a lot of police shootings with African American men. I've been at the end of these killings, and communities have been blowing up and exploding because of people with anger. And I believe we have to do a better job of communication cross-culturally. We have to really, and Chief Greenberg, I must say, was good at that. I mean, he used to have something come to Charleston. It was called What Works, or What Works Conference.
Yeah.
And police officers used to come here from all over the country to see what works in Charleston. All the little things that he did. And they would take what we did here in Charleston and go back to their departments and share the information.
Right.
And once again, a lot of those strategies and teachings had a lot to do with cross-cultural kinds of things. And I think that, sometimes we don't want to go to that, but that's what we have to go to. I have a lot of white priests in this diocese that I love. We work together in ministry. My church is mixed. I have African Americans, I have whites
Right.
in my congregation that come every Sunday. And a lot of times people walk in the church and say, I didn't know you had white people in your church. I said, this is God's church.
Right. Yes.
And you think about the church on Sunday morning. We still got black-white churches, so we got some ways to go. But I'm privileged that the Lord has allowed me again to cross that line as a priest and pastor. That I don't see color. I see people that are God's people, and then I see a lot of God's people that are hurting. And I try to minister to that hurt, the pain there. You look at what's happening right now. Just in the Charleston area, a lot of shootings in North Charleston, and people will get angry with the mayor and have him under fire. But I think the community has to rise up and says, okay, how do we make our community a viable community to live in and to live together, And it's not easy, but it takes all of the leaders to come to the table and says, okay, let's not point fingers. Let's find out how we're going to cook this turkey or bake this cake, because there are a lot of ingredients that you have to put into a community to bring about a positive change. A lot of ingredients, and so you have to bring all of these gifted people and these ingredients to the table. And I always use the analogy, I used it with Robert Clemens when they were doing development on the East Side,
Right.
that we were baking a cake, and in order to bake the cake you have to bring all these ingredients. Some people don't like vanilla, some people don't like chocolate.
Right.
Some people don't like nuts on their cake.
Right.
So how do you bake a cake that's going to be a good cake for everybody to enjoy? Well, that means bringing all the bakers to the table and coming up with a good idea to make a good cake. And I just use that as an example
Right.
of how to bring about a good change in the community. And again, I think, once again, you asked that question, what's next for me? Again, to make myself available for anybody that wants to talk to me about what the Lord has allowed me to do in my 35 years of ministry, in my 12 years on city council,
Right.
in my 23 years as the volunteer chaplain for Chief Greenberg. You know, and the Lord has allowed me to take those three different things and glean from them. I'm not the sole suppositor of all knowledge, but what knowledge and gift that I have, I'm willing to share.
Yes, indeed. We appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm willing to share it.
That's good to hear.
Okay.
Well, Reverend Jimmy Gallant, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
It was great. It's great talking to you again.
Thank you, likewise.
And then I appreciate what you do by
Thank you.
allowing people to share their hearts, and for others to look at what others are doing, that we can come together. Thank you so much, Quintin Washington.
Anytime. This is what God has called me to do.
Yes, okay? Don't stop.
I won't.
That's your gift.
It is. I finally realized that.
That's your gift.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with me.
Anytime.